who did your father work for?
The International Ladies Garment Workers Union, the ILGWU.
And they were mob connected?
Mob connected, right.
So what was, did you ever hear stories at all from him?
I
about
heard
the
a couple
mob?
of stories, yeah.
Did you ever meet any mobsters?
Oh, I met my share.
Did you meet Meyer Lansky?
No.
So what happened? Your father went to Cuba for 3 years? He just sort of...
No, they wanted him. They suggested he leave the country, prevent Uncle from getting a hold of his testimony.
So they were escaping the federal authorities?
Yeah.
When Lansky went to Cuba, he went with them?
Right.
So did he go? Did he go to Cuba?
Oh yeah, he was there.
Because you told me a couple days ago that he went to Florida and not to Cuba.
Florida and Cuba.
Okay.
That's where the mob was stationed in Florida. Right. And then, and did he ever talk about that stuff later on?
Never.
How did you find out about it?
From Uncle.
Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
Years later.
The FBI.
How old were you then?
Pardon me?
How old were you when you went to Cuba?
12.
12?
Yeah.
Did you realize what he was doing?
Yeah, well, my mother told me he was... I said, how come he isn't in contact? He said, well, he's not allowed to, or some crap like that. I never believed it. But
you said that Alan did not acknowledge that.
He never acknowledged it. Yeah. He never did. That's why I think Alan made a good spy. You know, Alan was...
a decoder.
Decryptor. He was in the furthest part of Alaska, right off the Soviet peninsula.
In the Navy?
In the Navy, right.
And he was intercepting messages?
Intercepted messages, and so did his uncle. My uncle did the same thing. And
his brother?
No, it was our uncle.
Oh.
But was that, so he was working in military intelligence?
He was military intelligence, and in his headquarters was in Long Island, and they blew up his case. I mean, what happened was that he became a Nazi interceptor.
Right.
And they had a station in Florida, and it was under the United States, really, but in fact it was a Nazi...
Who, your uncle?
Yeah, Martin.
Oh, but so he was working in military intelligence?
His whole career was in military intelligence.
Was that your entree into military intelligence?
No.
How did you get into military intelligence then?
I was asked when I was still in basic training.
But it wasn't because your uncle suggested it,
no,
or maybe...
I don't think so. No. I used him as a reference, of course.
So both you, your brother, and your uncle all worked for
right.
military intelligence.
Yeah, and I had nothing to do with Alan. I never knew what he did for a long time.
And when you were in the Korean, when you went to Korea, you were you were a bodyguard for Truman.
Yeah, I was a bodyguard. I was in intelligence in MacArthur, not Truman.
What did you do?
I worked for MacArthur for many years.
And what was MacArthur like?
He never said a word to me. I was a babysitter for his kids.
Really? You babysat MacArthur's kids?
Well,
Arthur MacArthur?
I took him shopping.
Were you a babysitter for Arthur MacArthur? That was his son?
Douglas MacArthur.
Douglas MacArthur Jr.
No, Douglas MacArthur.
Yeah, but his son was Arthur MacArthur, right?
Yeah, but he was a good kid, and I used to take him shopping.
And you never dealt with MacArthur himself?
He never said a word to me.
Oh. So what were you doing? What was your
I guarded
role?
him. I made sure that he got home safely. I'd pick him up and he got home safely.
But he never talked to you?
Never talked to me.
Did you overhear conversations? What was he like?
Nope.
Huh.
He did his own thing. The only time when I was still in the military, my last station was in New York City at Governor's Island. And we got a call that from our people that 2 tons of his materials was shipped to the federal building in New York City. And they asked me to go down and check it out. So I went down there, but our people were going through his stuff. I never knew what was in there. I didn't touch it myself. And MacArthur came in, and he knew he couldn't do anything about it.
Is that when Truman fired him?
Of his duty. He was fired before then.
But you were
But he was still a general in the U.S. Army. You don't get fired like that unless they execute you.
Okay, so they were going through his...
He was going through his stuff, and he still never said anything to me.
Huh.
Never.
What other VIPs did you come across when you were in Korea?
All kinds of VIPs, but they didn't say anything to me, and I didn't talk to them. I
like
saluted them.
Who else did you come across when you were...
I don't even remember.
Were you there when Truman came?
Oh yeah, I was in Wake Island when Truman fired him.
So you were with MacArthur when he was fired?
That's right.
Did you see his reaction at all? Was he grumpy?
Reaction. Never said a word to me.
Huh. Did you see Truman himself?
Oh yeah, and not only that, Truman called my parents. What happened was he had an escort, somebody, a personal escort, take all our names who was in there. He invited us in to eat with him because they had a Quonset hut on Wake Island just for him.
Okay.
He didn't like eating alone.
And why did he call your parents?
This is a general,
To be polite.
that he met me and that he wanted my parents to know that I was okay.
Wow.
And when they called my parents, hung up on him, thought it was a big joke.
Oh, they didn't think it was really the president calling.
It was a joke. Well, 2 weeks later, they let me know that they called my parents and assured my parents that that was a real call.
Wow. That's funny.
So.
And then you were working you still were working in military intelligence when you came back to the States?
What they call counterintelligence, not military intelligence. What they really joke about is I was a doorbell ringer. I used to go and knock on people's doors and say, do you know John King or Max Wallace, and how well you know him, and is he trustworthy, for clearance, for background clearance.
So that's what you were doing. But you were also keeping tabs on subversives, taking photos,
Not really.
that sort of thing?
Most of the time I was ringing bells.
Huh. So it wasn't very glamorous.
Pardon?
It wasn't very glamorous work.
No.
But this was the height of the Cold War, right?
Yeah.
So they were looking for a commie under every bed.
Right. Under every bed.
And then did you end up working, continuing your intelligence activities when you got out of the Army?
Not really. No.
So what were you doing when you were traveling around the world?
I became a cop.
Yeah.
While I was in college.
And then when I was a kid, we would get a postcard from you from Namibia, and you were working with SWAPO. Or we would get a postcard from Nicaragua, and you were working with the Sandinistas.
Right.
These were, future enemies of the United States, but nobody had ever heard of them then. But you were working with them. So why were you working with them? You were working for the government.
I was getting information, and somebody introduced me to them, what have you.
You were getting information for the U.S.
Yeah.
government.
Yeah,
So you were
course.
keeping tabs on them.
Was
Yeah.
that when you were
For
at
who?
Southern?
What?
At Southern Illinois University?
Oh, long before when I was at SIU, I did some work.
So who were you working
Wow.
for?
Oh, intelligence.
But what department? There's
The Defense Intelligence Agency.
the Defense Intelligence Agency. That's
Yeah.
who you were working for.
Yeah.
So you would go, you'd meet with like potential enemies of the United States and report
yeah,
back.
right. So-called enemies.
But you
I
were
know
undercover. You were what? You
That's
had.
right.
You were. What was your cover?
I was a photographer in the U.S. Army.
But later on, you were working with international development,
yeah,
community
yeah.
development.
When I started in college, while I was in college, I used to go on weekends on various trips
Working for the government.
for the government. Yeah.
But when you met with SWAPO or when you met with the Sandinistas, you were just what? Who were you?
They knew that I was in the army.
But later, when you
Yeah.
left the army years later, when I was a kid, you were sending
Yeah.
postcards from Nicaragua or
Right,
from
right,
Namibia.
right.
What were you officially on these trips?
Yeah, I was still checking on people who they asked me to check on people.
But they thought you were a friend. You were just
right.
what?
They never
Just doing
they
research?
Yeah, they never accused me of being an intelligence agent. They never knew. I would be dead by now.
When I was a kid, you were in Namibia and you had to go to you were shot at or something. You had to go to the Mayo Clinic or something like
Yeah,
that. What
right.
what was that
I
about?
was shot at a couple of times.
Why?
I never did find out.
Why, you were just walking around and shots rang out? Or
I was on a trip or at a meeting or what have you. We were at a luncheon one time and they shot everybody.
Huh.
And I wasn't wounded. Or once I got hit in the arm.
So when you were at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, again when I was a kid,
Right.
that was the latter years of the Vietnam War.
Right.
And it later was revealed that that SIU campus was the CIA's headquarters. for
Right.
conducting the Vietnam War. That's
Right.
where they conducted their
Yeah,
operations.
right.
You just happened to be teaching there at the same
I
time.
haven't been teaching there.
That's not a coincidence, is it?
No.
Oh. So what was the story? You would teach 4 days a week, and then you were allowed to. You would travel 3 days a week. You would travel. You would globetrot, and then come back
That's
to your
right.
classes on Monday.
Right.
Is that some sort of
Yeah.
special arrangement that you had?
I usually taught Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Okay? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would be traveling
So you'd be traveling for the government
for the government.
during the
right.
rest of the week.
Right.
But you were working for Defense Intelligence Agency,
That's
not
right.
not for the CIA, not for the company.
Never worked for the CIA. No.
But there would be crossover. You would be.
We'd meet each other.
Huh.
They used to laugh when they met me because I was a kid. After 5 years in the military, I was 22 years old. 22 years old.
But the stuff you were doing in the army, that's not the same stuff as you were doing years later
No,
when you
no,
were
no.
when you were teaching at
It was
SIU or
more
whatever.
sophisticated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my grandmother tells me that you arranged for her to sit on the dais with Charles de Gaulle, and he held an umbrella over her head. It started raining, and he held the umbrella over her head while he was president of France.
That's right.
What kind of connections did you have where you could arrange for your mother-in-law to sit next to Charles de Gaulle, one of the
She
great
enjoyed
leaders
that.
of the 20th
She
century?
wanted to meet these people. I said, I can't help you. I'll introduce you and you'll take care of you. But that's where it stopped.
Yeah, but who would you call to get, your mother-in-law to be sitting next to Charles de Gaulle, one of the great
I
leaders?
got a lot of the people. She sat next to a lot of people like that.
Yeah, but what kind of contacts did you have where you could arrange that? Not anybody could
I
just...
made some calls, that's all. I knew a lot of people.
Huh.
But because of your work with Julia Silverman?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was cleared. I always had a top secret clearance.
He was a member of parliament.
Yeah.
How did you end up with... so you were very close friends with his Labour MP. What was his name? Julius Silverman?
Oh, yeah. And he was not a communist. He was a liberal.
But he was pretty close to the Soviets, right? He was
Yeah,
fairly pro-Soviet.
Yeah, they liked him, but I never gave them information about him.
You were just friends.
Yeah.
He arranged, I
He
think.
was here. You know that when Hope was a baby,
Yeah.
he came over and he watched me diaper Hope.
Oh.
Well,
Serious,
no.
and
And
his
then-
wife.
And then he died soon after, I guess, right?
Honey?
He died soon after that.
Yeah.
I remember he arranged for you to have like a behind-the-scenes tour of Big Ben and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
How did you meet him in the first place?
I met him at somebody's home. One of my contacts in England invited me to lunch in Birmingham. And he was the MP for Birmingham. And he says, we're at the lunch, please don't be, fear this, but we're going to have a member of parliament at lunch. And I said, okay, fine. And I talked to the man, and he invited me to parliament. But
Was this
that
in the
was
60s?
What?
Was this in the 60s?
Yeah.
So in the early 60s, you went to you brought my mother to one of the most notorious trials of the 20th century, Eichmann trial.
Yeah.
The hottest ticket in the world at the time.
That's
you just
right.
happened to get into the courtroom. Who would you have to call to get a
People
ticket like that?
Like Silverman and what have you.
This wasn't your intelligence connections that you used?
Yeah.
Oh, so
Well, I had a top secret clearance. I never divulged any of the information that I obtained.
including right now, you're not really divulging anything confidential,
It
but
wouldn't do you any good to anybody.
Yeah.
Are we ready to go to
Yes.
eat?
We better stop
Yes.
now.
so you don't actually know who killed Kennedy.
I don't what?
You don't actually know who killed Kennedy.
No, I don't.
But if you did, you couldn't tell me anyway.
No, I don't know. I
Right.
don't know.